Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Saturday, the 31st of December 2022, and Sunday, the 1st of January 2023. This is your host, Nigel Creaser, and I'm going to have a look today at what had happened in 2022 and what I'm looking forward to in 2023. Speak to you soon. So, the last show of the year and kind of first show of the new year. It's been a busy old year with the podcast. I think it's well over 1,000 minutes of content produced this year. I breached 13,000 downloads, total of 16 guests. Moved to every week in September, and I've got interviews scheduled now in advance. Kind of takes me out to August. I've got recorded already through to I think it's the end of February, which is very different to maybe this time last year, and certainly in the middle of last year where it was getting quite difficult to get guests. So it's fantastic that this has moved on. And I'm looking at, in front of me now, the list of the guests that I've had on here and the topics we covered, from managing time, marketing with project management. We were listening to the project chatter guys and a bit of their history, construction, professors' views of management in general, how to be a rebellious PM, leading virtually, which is difficult for all of us these days, talent retention, being a change ninja, and how people and projects are sort of intertwined, monsters of team management, project management and fashion, the career toolkit, agile and beyond, innovation in project management, horses and management, and enneagrams, and taking us to the next level of our performance. And the topics, when I look back at them and kind of review what we've had there, the guys are so generous to give their time and so much information. So if this is your first or one of your early ones, I really do urge you to jump back, have a listen to what's happened over the past year. So it's been fantastic. I've moved from Zoom to Riverside, kind of through my tightness, if you like, in some ways, but that's given me some more benefits on how I can do the recording. The YouTube channel, I've tried to put a bit of emphasis on that. Again, still trying to work on improving the quality of that. If you're listening on YouTube, welcome, and please do share, like, subscribe, the whole usual sort of thing. I was very fortunate off the back of the podcast and on the last book. I got invited to speak at the Greek conference for project management, their 17th conference, which was great, and that helped me get a new mic and a new camera, again, hopefully to improve the quality of what you're getting here. And I've also got asked to host a roundtable panel working with Capgemini at their business agility conference in November, talking about Sendatsu. And I will be having it's on my wall actually, it's at the Art of Leadership for the 21st Century and Beyond. I have a future guest, Mr. John Kesselfell, who wrote about this and who was on that panel, and we're going to delve into that and give you some really interesting tips and tricks and kind of a slightly different focus on how we manage and get the best out of our people. So along with that, so I'm jumping into 2023 a little bit there. From a personal point of view, as you know, I was ill last year. This year has been a really good year of resetting, getting well, getting ready to move forward, and I feel in a much better place than I was last year. I have also as you will know, my exercising has been is important to me. It's important for my mental health, and I got injured earlier in the year, but I am back up to running. So my kind of highlights of my running has been amazing, really, because it's just I built up, and I've been running some of the fastest times I've run for 6, 7, 8 years. So that's coming along well. So hopefully that will carry on into the new year. We had, from a family perspective, a fantastic break in the summer over in Greece. Took my girls there, and my girls and my wife Jodie give me so much support in giving me the time and space to do the podcast, and it's great, and they're my reason for being in me. I'd also like to thank the organisations that, through my sporting exploits, in quotes, I've managed to secure a number of organisations to help me with, and that allowed me to become an affiliate with them. They include Talk Fitness, Scimitar Sportswear, Cycle of Good, Lucky Saint, Shocks, and Brick Caps, along with other organisations. My brother's always supporting me, so his motorcycle company, Creases Motorcycles and Customs, Paul at Black Chili, for supporting me with the hosting of the website and things like that, and Templo, which you will have all seen, where were supporting me early part of the year. So all of those guys, thank you so much for supporting me this year, and hopefully we can continue those relationships through into 2023. So thank you. Some of you will have been long-term listeners and will be aware that I've started this podcast on a product called Anchor. So when I started, I was working out, how do I do it? What do I need to do to get a podcast out there? All these different things. How do I actually get it out into different podcasting areas? And how do I potentially make some money out of podcasting? And I discovered Anchor, and the answer to every one of my questions really was simple, and it was Anchor. Anchor provides a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distribution your podcast if you're interested in doing one. Best of all, it's free. It's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. I can do it on my phone. I can do it on the laptop. It's fab. And now Anchor can match with great sponsors who can advertise on the podcast and hopefully support and pay for some of the stuff that's going on. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing by reading this ad. Anchor will pay me for doing this advert. So the way I use Anchor, and a recent thing that I've started to experiment with, is using the contributor section where someone rings in and leaves a message. You'll have heard earlier on maybe one of my podcasts, people's contributions and questions and queries and thanks. So it's a great way of using it, really. Over the time, I've recorded directly into the app. I've recorded and uploaded. I've recorded on my phone and uploaded at the same time. So it's really flexible. It's for you to do it when you want, where you want, and however you want. So if you've wanted to start a podcast and make some money out of it, why not go to anchor.fm/start. That's anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using it. Okay, I can't wait to hear it. So that was 2022. What have we got going forward? So looking at the podcast, we've got the weekly show, and that's going to carry on through the year. I'm hoping that I should have 20 plus guests and over 1,500 minutes of content generated by the end of the year. As I said, I think earlier, I've got January and February scheduled. Greg Offner, Lucy Harrison, Abdullah Al-Mamoon, and Stephen Weidner. And as I said, the rest are through to August. I think the target for the show really is to try and increase the visibility. That's always been a battle with the podcasts. I'm obviously getting more visible because I am getting lots of requests from marketers who are willing to try and give me the visibility and guarantee downloads. I think I take some of that with a pinch of salt. because I'm not sure that people are just going to be charging me for running bots against it. So I want quality listeners like you. I'm going to get more focus on the social media side of it and my website SEO. And your help spreading the word would be very appreciated. And actually, you're listening there, if any of you want to be on the show, get in touch. If there's anyone you want to be on the show, get in touch. It's so I know there's so many amazing stories out there, so that would be fantastic to get people on the show. Writing wise, I have a novel that still needs writing, I've talked to you about before. However, my next business type book, I dictated a lot of it the other day when driving. Safe, hands-free, etc. It needs collating, expanding and tidying up, editing, etc. and all that sort of thing. But it's an idea I've had for some time that I've kind of want to bring out there. So I kind of got a lofty goal of trying to hit both of them, get the novel done, finish the draft as a minimum, and get the other book pulled together and published maybe by the end of the year. Talking on books, as of the 1st of January, there is an audio version of the Hacks book. So Product Manager Productivity Hacks. I have used Google's AI service to convert the book. I have got a bit of listen through and edit to probably do, but I, as always, kind of push it out there, get it out there first, fail fast kind of feeling. It's, as I say, it's available from the 1st. It's going to be interesting. It'll be really great to hear feedback from anyone on what they thought on it, and if you spot any little typos I might have hit in there, please let me know. So again, that's out now. Jump along to the website, nigelcrease.com /prodhacksai. I think I've got the URL for that, and you can get a copy. It will be available on other platforms. I've PayHip and things like that, but I haven't quite got around to finalising all that side of it. So when those go out, I'll kind of put some comms out on where that's gone. I plan to do a couple of speaking engagements this year, see if I can expand on what I did last year. Fingers crossed anyway. Some of it will be local event type stuff, some of it will be maybe some online, you never know, I might be able to get some paid items as well. And if anyone has an opportunity for someone to speak, whether it be on project management, whether it be on the productivity hacks, whether it be on my Alexa skills stuff, whether it be on podcasting, on how to kick off podcasts, let me know. I'm open to all conversations on things like that. I am also piloting a little bit in discussions with a training platform to be able to put some training out there, paid for training it would be, but it's kind of bite-sized, like the way they're doing it. So that will be based off the Project Manager's Hacks book, Productivity Hacks book, and I'll get that again if that's out there. So it's another one to have a look at. And health-wise, if I get my London place, personal stuff, I'm after a London place to run for Alzheimer's Research UK. Not yet had confirmation whether I get that, but if I don't get that, there will be another adventure of some description that I will do to try and raise some funds, and with my recovery of my knee now, I can hopefully get back on the judo mat and move towards my second Dan. So that's what I'm looking for from my future, and what we've got on here, and there's some stuff coming through on the podcast. I'm sure that you will find there's incredible benefit from the 4 people I've got already recorded, and even more to come. So so I suppose the final, just to sign off here, is to say thank you all for listening. Thank you for your likes and your shares. I hope 2023 brings you everything that you want, and gives you the fun and challenge through the year. And yeah, Happy New Year, really. That's it. And if you ever want to drop a message, as Naveen did, drop a message into the Anchor system, and we can Q&A or anything like that. Let me know. And finally, there are some bloopers of me doing these recordings over the year at the end of this show. I'm sure you don't think I'm perfect, but just to demonstrate. So goodbye, and speak to you in the new year. I also forgot to mention that at the end of the show, I've also included all the excerpts from all of my guests, little 1-minute bites for you to have a listen to, and just get an experience of any of the guests you've not heard before. Enjoy.
Thank you so much, Nigel. This is Naveen from India. Your efforts are highly helpful for project managers throughout the world. Thank you so much.
Wow, you made it this far. I'm guessing that you enjoyed the show if you have. Or maybe you've just left it playing in the background and forgot it was on. But if you did enjoy it and you're inclined to, I'd be delighted if you could share the show with your colleagues. Discoverability with podcasts is quite difficult, especially with a niche one like this. But sharing with your colleagues and letting them have a chance to listen to these fantastic guests would be brilliant. If you've got time, a review on whatever platform you listen to it on would be great too, especially if it's a 5-star one. Again, that makes it easier for people to discover the show when they're searching on there, because the comments raise it up the old search engine optimization on all the different tools. If you are feeling flush, I have a couple of ways you could contribute. One is Patreon, Patreon/Sunday Lunch PM, and you can donate some money to the podcast that way, or you can jump along to my website, nigelcreaser.com, www.nigelcreaser.com, and click on the link to the shop, and in there you've got all my books that I've created in the varying different guises, a number of different ways you can grab a copy of those. And down the bottom I've got the my guests' books, so everyone who's been on here, if they've had a book, I've got a link to their book in there, and Amazon give me a little bit back for when someone buys from them. But more importantly, if you come back next time and listen, I'll be delighted. So I'll leave you alone and let you get on with your day now. Thank you. Bye. Well, thank you to Victoria. I hope you enjoyed. Well, I hope you enjoyed. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Hi, and welcome to the... Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.
Nobody ever dies with an empty inbox. I mean, ever. So and I think of it like laundry or washing dishes. There's always more dishes because it's a process that's happening every day. Your work happens every day. You will never be done. You will never be fully caught up. If you happen to think you're fully caught up at one point, you'll be behind in a week because of other things. So yes, it's key then to focus on what's the most important thing to get done today. If I could only get one thing done today, what would that be? What is my largest outcome that I really want to achieve that I can do something towards today? And a lot of the little stuff, let it slide, delegate it, dump it, get it off your plate, and you'll be a lot less stressed for it. So
we work back from the result. So this is what we want. This is how we think we're going to get there. And then we market that into the team on the basis that they then understand why. So we call that start with why.
Right. Okay. So start with why. So that kind of what's in it for me kind of conversation as well.
So we had to very quickly stop talking about ideas in terms of mine and Andy's idea, and start talking about things in terms of is Codebreak's idea. So immediately that helps with buy-in from the off, because they feel like we're not just doing it to line our pockets or doing it to make our lives easier or whatever it might be. And then the other side of it is what's in it for me. So very much, well, if you can get, for example, if you can do X, Y, and Z, you'll actually shave 30 minutes a day off the time you're doing grunt work, and we're not going to ask you to fill that time with anything else. So you can use that time to read, you can use that time to play pool, you can use that time to learn, and immediately people are a lot more into it.
Everyone wants clarity and simplicity, and if you need buy-in from people, from employees, from stakeholders, whoever's on the team, that clarity just can't be underestimated. Just how much easier it is, where everyone knows where they're going, and these are the checkpoints along the way. So it's like, here's the strategy and vision, and we're going to break it down into bite-chunked, almost game plans, which are a series of tasks, and that's laid out for people to follow, rather than like, I mean, I couldn't imagine working on something and have to chop and change every day. I mean, there's adapting, and there's just having the piss taken out of you.
I think project management is another example of a disaster waiting to happen in terms of the gap. So the projects are getting bigger and the skills gap is getting wider. If you ask the average PM or PMO person about data or digital, there's a very large gap, and that's just from my observations. I haven't done any census data on this, and you can tell me your experiences, but I think it's running away from us. And it's not like they have to understand it. Like, we can operate an iPhone without understanding how the iPhone works, but we're not giving them enough interface understanding so they understand how to operate those machines and those tools.
Leadership is a function. So whether that is inhabited with someone at the bottom, someone who's just coming in, working in the industry, or if someone is at the top, then that leadership, raising your standards is relevant to every single person, because of course it does start from the top. I mean, if the fish is rotten from its head, then that will infiltrate to the body. This is, again, goes down to that vision of that leader, that vision of saying, well, we need to set our people up for success, because if you're getting someone who, as you said, is technically brilliant to all of a sudden lead and talk and inspire people, then they're going to falter. They're not going to be as best as they can. And yes, of course, training is available, but we always have to look at what is the individual's natural disposition in order to achieve what they achieve and what they are naturally good at as well. That's how you get the most out of people. Sometimes that's the best. The best is not always the most, and vice versa. But this is where leadership in organizations, again, does need to start seeing individuals as not just their work personality, but their whole person. As leaders, we have a large part, but we also know the importance of giving recognition where recognition is due. And people who do this, and it's not by reducing themselves, saying, no, I didn't do anything, or it's accepting that, that recognition. But also, when you give that recognition to others, it is a reflection of the confidence of your own leader, that you're not someone who is intimidated or threatened because someone else is doing better than you. They actually thrive off that when they can see that their team is, quote unquote, thriving as well. And that is a marker of a confident leader. And that is something that is truly so rare to see.
It's one thing if everybody's remote, it's another if you are the remote person and everybody else is in the office. We remember how during conference calls, you had to be in China, so you're calling in for the conference call and everybody ignores you. You could have been off the phone for a while, the line went dead, nobody knows, right? And it's important to remember that if you're going to be the remote worker, your career will pay a price for that, right? Now, people don't want to hear that, but there's been a bunch of studies of this. They all show the same thing. And ask yourself this mental exercise. Say, suppose I have an identical twin in my office. We're doing the same job, the same way. We're both equally good at it. But your twin is going to go back to the office and you're going to move to Himalaya and be a remote employee. Which one of you is going to get ahead? Well, I mean, we know. And what were you going to have to do to fix that? Well, there's nothing I can think of the way organizations work now, because it's so much about access to information, opportunities to shine, to grab the interesting projects early on, to know what's going on so you can adjust to the whims in the organization. We don't know how to fix that. I can tell you where I think things are going. I think we've had an enormous amount of attention around the fact that many employees really would like to keep working remotely. Yeah. It's not all employees, interestingly, and by some measures in the US, some surveys suggest about a third want to go back to the office, more or less the way it was before, and very small percentage, less than 20%, are really thinking about wanting to be permanently remote someplace. So most everybody wants to be something in between. Yeah. The problem is we don't see on the employer side what's in it for them.
We forget the fact that the real stakeholders are much wider and more varied than you realize.
I don't think you forget that in a hospital, because I'm sure I did in insurance, because in insurance world, you hope people will never use your product because that's how you rake in the money. But in a hospital, when I did my induction, I went to visit a hospital and had a tour, and we're going behind the scenes and stuff. I remember standing at the reception desk and the lady in front of me was crying, and she was a visitor or a patient. And I was thinking, wow, this is what we do. If my IT project puts computers into theatre and they break, someone gets their operation cancelled and they have to live with breast cancer for another day. And that is unacceptable. And so in the healthcare environment, it's really clear to see, and you never forget that the end customer is the patient, is the consultant. You're trying to make people's lives easier.
We did an awful lot of conference calls. In fact, had I written the book 5 years earlier, the virtual leadership book, it would have been called Conference Calls Made Easy. And it wouldn't have really helped at all in the pandemic, would it? No. Whereas it went a bit nuts. So it used to be that I worked a lot with people who were doing international projects, often in big IT companies or pharma companies, financial services companies, where they had people scattered around the world, just like you described. And then when the pandemic hit, all of a sudden, I had teachers, people from universities, I had doctors, local government clerks, all sorts of people were picking up my book that I'd written essentially for international project managers in 2015 and finding it really helpful. And I was thinking, hang on, I've spent lots of time thinking this through. And if I've got this to the right level, it should work really well in this pandemic. And it did, which is really, really good. British native mother tongue English speakers, we are, as a group, pretty awful to people who are business professionals who speak English as their second, third, or fourth language. There's a sort of subset of professional English that is used by people who don't have English as their mother tongue, which is a much smaller subset and doesn't include all those colloquialisms and those things that you were talking about. We really ought to reduce, if we have a wide range of languages, we should make it easy for people. We need to adapt, we need to facilitate, we need to reduce our language down to that sort of business subset, really, if we can.
When it comes to belonging, it's not just whether a person feels like they fit in, because some people can fake it to fit in. It's a matter of the fact that they believe that where they're working is a special place. They promote it. They tell people they're proud of where they work, and they're also included. So the belonging part not only says, do I feel like this is a special place where I'm working, and I'll promote it and talk about it, but I've been included. So to make this sense to those people listening, it's kind of like this. If I invite you to a party, then you have a sense of belonging because, hey, I'm with the cool kids. I got an invitation to the party. But you don't truly believe that you fully belong until when you get to the party, I make sure that you know where the food is. If there's music, I get you up on the dance floor. It's part of our inherent DNA. We want to belong. We want to affiliate. We want to make sure that we're with someone who has the similar thinkings that we do. That's not uncommon. What's uncommon is that when people isolate themselves, that's an anomaly. That's an outlier. But for the most of us, we do want to interact with people, and we can interact either personally, and we have a lot of preferences of personal interaction, but there is a lot of individuals who can interact through some sort of technology. I mean, I'll give you this example. My wife and I will be married 45 years this coming Saturday. We started our relationship. Oh, thank you. We started our relationship on the phone because we didn't live in the same community. We didn't go to the same school. and we were on the phone every night. We used technology 45 years ago to create a relationship that has lasted this long. So
one, how do you present things in a different way that's going to be interesting and people are going to get something from? And two, I mentioned to Eddie that I'd always wanted to write a book, and he says, whatever you do, don't write a book. It will just burn up so much time. So that was a kind of gauntlet for me. Anybody who gives me a challenge like that, I'm off. And all of a sudden this idea came to me, and it was based on Choose Your Own Adventure books, which I don't know if you read them as a kid.
I did, yeah. Well, not a lot, but a few of them I did read, and I did enjoy them. That jump to another page, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to, you're given a choice. Do you go left? Do you go up the mountain? Do you go down the river? And you go to the page. So I just thought it would lend itself. The stories would lend themselves really well to that. So it's a Choose Your Own Adventure type book. I can't use as Choose Your Own Adventure because it is trademarked.
Oh, really?
And they managed to sue. There was the film out a couple of years ago. Black Mirror chap made, so they sued him for labeling it as a Choose Your Own Adventure. Oh, right. But it's a Choose Your Own Adventure type book. So there's a story happens, and you have to make a decision. And as the reader, you decide what you're going to do. Are you going to go into battle with this person? Or are you going to give up on this idea? Are you going to take the easy route because that's what they're asking you to do, or are you going to fight? So each story, and there's 10 stories. And then there's some other stories in there as well, which I'll explain in a minute. But each story has a decision to make, and sometimes there's other decisions further in, and then you get the outcome of that decision. Yeah, you need to create the space. I think as well, rule break is probably not a great term because it just, people want to be rule breakers or disruptors, or they're against it. And it's not really about breaking the rules. It's about finding ways around them. There's a really good book that helps explain all of this. There's some really great tools. It's called the Change Ninja Handbook.
You've been practicing your pitching, haven't you? Well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's like you said, it's about working within the constraints that you've got and pushing. Sometimes you have to push everything to the limit.
There's this guy who's a former head of training at Facebook, and it's probably been a couple of years since I interviewed him, but he had a book on culture. But I'll tell you, Nigel, this idea was helpful. And I think it's related to what you said. If this is not a direct quote, it's really close. He said something along the lines of, every company sucks. Your job is not to make it not suck. It's to make it suck less. and part of the reason why it sucks is you're part of it and you suck. Right? So I almost didn't interview him because that was like the depth of the book. But isn't there some truth to it? Like sometimes we think, oh, my company is so messed up or whatever. But hey, I'm part of it. So what am I going to do? And I could blame people. I could blame my team. I could blame the company. I could blame the culture. But what am I doing to make it better? Yeah. And make sure I'm not making it worse.
Yeah. Nobody wants to share their failures, right? I mean, we're sharing success stories, right? Of course, like, I was in organizations where they ran these, what they call the brown bag sessions, right? Where you actually explain all your, how have we done that? How have we achieved that success story, right? And you tell them all about them, and the entire organization is listening to you of what you have achieved, right? But then we need the same thing for failures. No, how did we run this project against the wall? I mean, what happened there, right? Please tell us. We want to know, because this is where the insights are coming from. If we just talk about success stories, we will not improve. It's not going to work, right? We need the full picture. But then there's this problem that people will not, or they will be at least reluctant to share failures, right? Nobody wants to share failure. People will just act out of fear, right? And put a lot of contingency on top of it, right? And I mean, I could go on and on because the whole culture behind this, right? In especially large organizations where you run these performance reviews and you get basically judged on this, or PMOs with their metrics, right? Which use, you haven't met this milestone, right? And then they punish you, and you get basically you run around from meeting to meeting to justify why is your project amber or red, right? And you feel like you're on some, you're being processed. Yeah.
Well, actually, what you need is someone to come to you and assist you in like, you may put together a plan on how to bring it back, but actually,
yes,
as an organization in those scenarios, we should be turning around and going, that guy needs help, that girl needs help.
Yeah, and then I found, oh, there's this job called a project manager, and apparently they're really organized, and I think I can do that. So then I sort of put the feelers out to see, who I knew that might be able to give me a hand getting that kind of job. And actually, I interviewed for the first one I interviewed for, I got that job.
Brilliant.
No, I had no experience in project management, had no qualifications, no nothing, didn't know what Prince 2 was. I'd be like, who's Prince 2?
I think a lot of us did that when we first heard of it. It took many years for me to realize what the heck that was.
Yeah. But yeah, and that's where it just went from there. And I absolutely loved it. What I can say about the stroke, basically, I attribute it to putting my body through very little sleep, looking after it very poorly for 10 years. And that career did, as much as I loved that career, it did take its toll on my body. And also I was involved, my very last project I was involved with it. There was an individual who had a reputation for being unpleasant, but this person made my life a living hell, day in, day out, I would say, for 6 months. And that was the tipping point for me, and I couldn't take it anymore.
It applies certainly as an entrepreneur or employee. And let's just do a really quick basic example. Let's suppose you get a little bit better at negotiating. And we're not talking about being the world's greatest negotiator. We're just talking about being a little better than you are. So imagine if you're going for a job and you get a job offer for £70,000. But instead of taking it as it is, you negotiate. So you do a quick call or a few emails, will take about 5 minutes, and you negotiate for £71,000. £1,000 more, that is not a huge lift. We can all imagine doing that. If you're 30 years old and you do this negotiation and you do nothing else in your career, if you sit in that same job for 30 years, 5 minutes of negotiating just got you £1,000 more. For the next 30 years, you just got £30,000. Right? That's amazing. These skills that we're talking about, they're not learned the way we traditionally teach things. When you were learning the periodic table, your teacher said, here are the elements, and this is a proton, this is a neutron, remember it. And you'd remember it and you'd write it down on the test. That's not how we learn leadership, networking, negotiating, or all these other skills. There is no formula. There's not simple stuff to memorize. It's more akin to learning a sport or learning how to play an instrument. You have to try it. You have to practice. You have to get feedback and reflection. And so the best way to learn these skills is through peer learning groups. And this program I give away for free is something your organization can do to use it.
The hangry snargler, which has, that's a monster which encourages a ferocious appetite for work and people taking on too much.
Yeah.
Now, the problem with that is, as you've said, Nigel, is that often that means critical processes are in the hands of just a few people. And ultimately, that means the business isn't really secure long term, because if you take away that person, which could happen, because what, if nothing else we've learned from the last couple of years is how volatile everything is and how things can just change quickly. I had a podcast interview scheduled 2 days ago, and I was just about to start it, and I had to go to the hospital with my child, and my child is fine. But you just never know when things are going to happen. So if you're not planning for these kind of random events in your business and for people to cover for other people, your business isn't as secure and it's also not as scalable.
Lots of fantastic books out there from from PMI, Agile Business Consortium in particular, around Agile project and program and portfolio management. But even they focus mostly on IT-enabled stuff. And I just wanted to get away from that and say, let's look and see what any project might look like if you apply agility to it. And to my mind then, once you've done that, you can say, you can use that as a model for building an organization that's friendly to projects. Other models are available, but here's one, and I think it works. And I have sometimes challenged a few folk on blogs around this, is when someone says I'm being agile, the question I ask is, what agile are you being, or what agile are you talking about?
I've seen you ask that question.
Because if someone says I'm being agile and I'm doing this, that, and the other, I'm saying, are you talking about software development? Yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay, so we know this. And so, for example, then you can then go off and talk about scrums and goodness knows what else. If someone says, well, actually, I'm talking about how we do in the project, and then someone says, and then they start talking Scrum language. Well, that's not right, because one is the software development approach, and the other one is a project management approach, and they're not the same thing.
Because uncertainty threatens our very survival. So if you, as you talk back to caveman times, if there was uncertainty, it was, am I going to get eaten by a tiger or a whatever? Or am I going to find food to eat today?
Yeah.
And that actually, both of those threaten your very existence. And uncertainty creates a threat around, am I safe? Can I survive this threat? And the pandemic was a great example of that, where it was an existential crisis of uncertainty. And there is the existential psychologists have done lots of research into that and said that whenever there is uncertainty, our levels of anxiety will naturally increase. Well, that's certainly what we saw in the pandemic. And of course, you've got different stakeholders who have different perspectives, who all want different things. And that often is surprising, but I don't know why it's surprising, because of course they have different things. You know, the sales director is always going to want something different from the ops director, because they're incented in different ways. And therefore, their requirements are always going to be different. And actually, that's a positive thing, because what that does is it creates a more well-rounded and more holistic view. This is where, as project managers and as leaders, we need to be able to develop those skills of uncertainty and the skills to be able to say, okay, so if you want that, tell me why you want that, and be really curious. Because what we tend to do is we make judgments really quickly. And of course, in uncertainty, those judgments are based on very little foundation.
And when I'm in my stressed out situation, I move to 3. And when I'm in my relaxed situation, I move to 9, right? And the underlying, and I'll back out a little bit, so even though there's 9 types, you can also think of it as 3 groups of 3. And there's an underlying motivator for each one of these groups of 3.
Yeah.
And so the driver for the 8, the 9, and the 1 is anger. And the driver for the 5, the 6, and the 7 is anxiety. And the driver for the 2, 3, and 4 is feelings. So you have these 3 drivers, and then as we move into situations, those drivers will induce us to respond in certain ways. I'll tell you the punchline, right? So the Enneagram is this 9-step system, And it just happens that there are also these 9 personality types, one suited for each step in problem solving. So if you know where you are in the problem solving process, then you'll know what personality dynamic is best suited for that. And then I even will go into, because all types have access to all the other types. We all do. It's just with more or less ease, right? And so of course I'm a 6, so I know I have access to my type 6, and I've already told you I have access to the 9 and the 3, and I also have access to what are called the wings, the types on either side of me. So I also have access to the 5 and the 7, and I see the light bulbs go on, and then you just like sense this excitement in the group. And then they start to formulate, what they want the world to look like when the problem is solved. And then I move them through, step 2, make sure you have all the team members. Step 3, come up with some ideas. Step 4, choose the best ideas. Step 5, validate them. Step 6, build a plan around them. Step 7, build a presentation about the plan and show it to the CEO. And they do that, and they present to the CEO, and the CEO's like, yeah, go do it.